Good afternoon and welcome to Managine for the weekly rundown for the week of the 24th of July. It's been a shortened working week, 4 days this week, but we have seen the coal cap rise 2.9%. Most of that was on Thursday, driven by Ecopetrol, which I'll get to momentarily. Volumes have been better than average, I would suggest, $50 to $60 million a day. The test market, we have seen yields come down overall. We're down at 8.76% now on the 2020, although intraday volatility has been very low. Again, still a lot of pressure coming through from the corporate bond market. Gases to Occidente was the latest yesterday, so that's taking some of the volume out of the test market. The pace has been very strong. It's at 1971 closing the week. So we've moved ourselves firmly below 2,000. Again, it's still followed through from the Ecopetrol bond issue overseas. People were expecting the money to come back, so that's helping that. In the bond market itself, we had EPM. They issued $500 million in overseas bonds this week. That followed up from the $1.5 billion last week from Ecopetrol. Just a footnote, the EPM deal was 13 times oversubscribed, so clearly foreigners have plenty of appetite for dollar bonds down here. On the macro and the information coming out of the macro side, construction licenses for May dropped 28.1%. We still had no recovery in that sector, which is kind of surprising, bearing in mind the interest rates are at an all-time low. So fingers crossed that will pick up fairly briefly. The other big story is obviously the central bank, we're still waiting around for their decision. We don't expect any change to 4.5%. But who knows, we'll probably get a very similar commentary to recently. They're going to keep following the data, that inflation is better, they expect a second half recovery, but we've been waiting 4 hours already. I'm not sure what's taking quite so long over the central bank. S&P had a report out yesterday. They reiterated their BB plus rating for the country and stable outlook. They gave the country a pat on the back for doing well during the crisis. They're a little concerned about 2010, not overtly, but they seem to think we have the groundwork in place for an upgrade to investment status in the future. Not sure if it's near future, medium or long term. In politics, obviously it's been a fairly busy week on the overseas front. Really difficult to know where to start. We'll start with Correa in Ecuador. He's obviously in problems because there's a tape of a FARC boss discussing funding for his election campaign. Correa's playing dumb, obviously. So that's one side. On the other border, we have Chavez, who's extremely teed off about the US bases being placed here, threatening all sorts of things, to buy billions of dollars of arms from Russia or to cut off trade with Colombia, you name it, he's talking about it. In the end, in my experience here so far, this will come to absolutely nothing, but everyone seems to be having their say right now. Domestically, the only person who's really commented on it, surprisingly, is Juan Santos, who basically just says, well, when it comes to Correa, who expects anything different? In domestic politics, the main story again is Noémie Sanin, who is back in town, going to stand for the Conservative Party or for the seat. They've already given her an extension to the 27th of August to get herself registered. By the 27th of September, they'll elect their candidate for that seat. The problem is she's asking for more time. The other rivals for that Conservative seat are being very nice and very welcoming, but at the same time they're saying there shouldn't be any change in the rules for her, so we'll see what develops there. But Sanin is definitely, clearly going to be very influential in this election. If it's not her, she's crossed parties, she goes between the Conservatives, she goes between the Uribe Alliance, she's created her own individual party before, so she's going to be very good and very important behind the scenes and perhaps deal broking ahead of the election to see who stands for the right-wing party. In the rest of the news, referring back to the Ecopetrol news from Thursday, the energy minister came out and said that the Rubiales field, which used to be known as the ugly duckling here because there was nothing there, he's now saying that instead of 125 million barrels of oil, there's potentially 500 million barrels of oil. That's important to Ecopetrol because they have 65% of that field and Pacific Rubiales have 35%. We saw both stocks jump up yesterday. Both companies basically have taken the official line that, as far as they know, nothing so far. There's been nothing through the super. But the energy minister is very much in the habit of being ahead on the news, so hopefully that's true for everyone. Exeter, a couple of things. We've had results out this week. They were slightly better than expected. The conference call that came subsequently, no big new information, but you do get the impression they're quietly optimistic for 2010 and maybe even for the last quarter of this year coming. This morning, Friday, they've actually announced formally an alliance with CAFAM. We're trying to get to the bottom of it, but effectively, until the super okays the whole deal, we're going to get limited information. But from what we understand, CAFAM will run the 91 pharmacy businesses within the Exeter stores. Exeter will run lock, stock and barrel the 38 CAFAM supermarkets, which 36 are in Bogota. It's an interesting deal. We're still trying to get to the bottom of it, but it does look a good deal for Exeter. Aside from that, Enca reported results. They weren't spectacular. We also went on a site visit. certainly they definitely are going the right way in terms of cost saving. They're going the right way instead of trying to expand their markets overseas. They're doing a lot of business with Europe right now. But the peso remains a major concern for them, and obviously in the same sector, Fabricato was taken at a very poor week. Again, this strong peso really doesn't help them at all. That's really about it for Medellin. It's now exactly 2 months until our conference here in Medellin, and let me tell you, we're filling up. We've got plenty of people already booked in. So really, if you want any more details on the conference, please let everybody know. In the meantime, everyone have a tremendous weekend.